Hey everybody, this is John Bell and this is the Harbinger Report. Sorry, I was trying to get the show off last night, but I had some stuff that jumped up in the way and it took me a whole lot longer to prepare for this one than I expected. I was up to midnight last night trying to work on it, but got it together. Couldn't add everything I wanted to, but that's the way things go. It's just too much information to try and cover. I have a fantastic guest that's going to be coming on next week that's going to expand on what the show is about tonight. And tonight, I'm doing this live and I'm just giving a talk on the history of the secret space program to try to bring people up to speed on that so that you're prepared for my next guest who's going to come on, because my next guest served in the secret space program. So I just wanted to try and give people a brief history. It's so much information. I mean, 1-2 hours is super brief to try to cover this material. And I'm sure I'll be expanding on it in the future. But I wanted to give the audience just a kind of an overlay of the basic history as best as I know it. I've been able to research over the years from the whistleblowers and things that have come to the surface, and many things that can be researched. Some things in this field, unfortunately, we only have testimony of some whistleblowers. However, there are whistleblowers that are given the same testimony on the same topic or information. So I think that's very important. But we are somewhat limited because this is kind of fringe information. But there are things that can be researched and verified. So the topic tonight is the secret space program and the history of the secret space program, how it got started, who's involved, that kind of thing. However, one thing I wanted to start off with, and this could be an entirely different show just on itself, but I want to touch on this because I think it's relevant and important before getting into this. I'm Christian, a lot of my viewers are Christian, and there's a lot of heated discussions in Christian community as to whether aliens exist or not, and if they do, are they demonic or not, et cetera, et cetera. I can tell you, everyone has the right to their own opinion. Mine is based off of my research and background, things that I've experienced as everybody's. I've been able to come into some direct contact in various ways that I'm not allowed to talk about too much. So I won't go into huge details on that. Needless to say, here's my take on it. Being Christian, I absolutely believe in God. I absolutely believe in demons, Satan, Lucifer, and fallen angels and all that. I do believe from many stories that there is some sort of connection to some of the alien encounters that seem to have a direct demonic connection to them. Where that line is, I can't exactly say. But I will say this. I also do believe that alien life is 100% real, intelligent alien life. I do believe that was created by God. And I do believe that not all alien life is anything demonic. Now, they can choose with free will to, be better, or I guess choose a life path of light or darkness, as all living beings are put to the test with that created by God. So that's my take on it. And to back that up, I'm going to add a few little things to that. All right. One is the story of Howard Storm. I don't know if anyone has heard this story. Howard Storm was an atheist who went on vacation with his family to France, and he had a tragic situation where his stomach exploded, and the bile in his stomach was eating his organs from the inside. And unfortunately, they were in a small, village in France, and they're like, "Sorry, the one single doctor has gone home for the day. We're trying to get in touch with him." But this was before cell phones and stuff like that, right? Well, he was in a hospital, and they wouldn't even give him pain medication. It got to the point it was so bad, he was praying for death, like literally, an atheist praying for death. Well, suddenly he notices his body standing next to the gurney, or where he was in the bed, and he's sitting there looking at his body, and he thought, well, this is weird. He's still trying to process that. And then two like nursing personnel came to the door and said, "Hey, you need to come with us, follow us." And he's like, "Okay." So he follows them, and they go down this hallway, and he says it became darker and darker and more ominous. And he would try to resist, and they would become more arrogant and violent with him, to the point that he tried to flat out resist them, and they attacked him, hitting him, punching him, beating him. Next thing you know, he said he's surrounded by a group that's hitting him, punching him. He said they were breaking bones. And then he said they started eating him like zombies. They just started eating his flesh. And he was on the ground in pain and freaking out. And finally, out of desperation, he called out for Jesus. And he said that when he did that, these creatures like reacted. He got a reaction, and they said, "Don't do that," kind of thing. Well, he was like, "Well, I got something out of that, so I'm desperate. Let me keep trying." So he kept calling on the name of Jesus, and he said finally Jesus appeared, and these things all disappeared. And he said Jesus just touched him, and then his body like healed, or what, this form of his spiritual body or whatever. He said that Jesus took him on a tour, and he said he brought him to purgatory, which is interesting. And he said, and Jesus had told him he was going to send him back, that his time wasn't over. He still had unfinished business, and he was going to send him back to earth. That he was going to heal him, et cetera, et cetera. If you study near-death experiences, you hear that story, hundreds, thousands of times. So he said Jesus took him to purgatory. So he said, well, when I go back, should I become Catholic? Because you showed me purgatory, and only the Catholics talk about purgatory. And to the dismay of many Catholics, friends of mine, Jesus said what he often says in these cases, which is, you go back and become whatever's going to bring you closest to me. And then he says that the Bible holds the basic truths of me, you, and our relationship, kind of thing. And so he left him with that. But then he took him on a tour of heaven, and his tour of heaven was beautiful. I highly suggest y'all go look this up when you have time, because I'm not doing it justice. Better to hear it from the horse's mouth, per se. So that's Howard Storm. Okay. But Anne Rice, who's the author of Interview with a Vampire, from Louisiana, which is just down the road from me. I'm in between Baton Rouge and New Orleans, where I was born. But anyway, Anne Rice, who wrote Interview with a Vampire and The Vampire Lestat and all that. I read those books back in the day when they first came out. She was so inspired by reading Howard Storm's or seeing Howard Storm's talk, that she kind of forced him or encouraged him to write a book about it. And she wrote a foreword in his book about his near-death experience, where he tells his experience. Well, one of the things that was so interesting about that, and the whole reason I'm bringing this up on this topic on this show tonight, is because Howard Storm asked Jesus what I would have asked Jesus, which is, are aliens real? Being a little kid growing up with sci-fi movies and all that, that's what I would have asked him. And that's what Howard Storm asked him. And Howard Storm said that Jesus told him, and I'm paraphrasing here, but basically he said, I would be a very small God if you were the only intelligent life that I created in this giant universe. In fact, he went on to explain that there's more universes, there are more dimensions, and they're all teeming with life. So I thought that was fascinating. Then Howard Storm said that the Lord showed him like a slideshow in his brain of different alien life forms. And one thing that struck him the most is most of them were what we would call humanoid, meaning standing upright with two arms, two legs, and a head. Some were just oddly different, like insects or even a gelatinous blob mass kind of thing that was intelligent. But the majority, for one reason or another, were humanoid looking, that he said that the Lord showed him. So I'm going to play a little clip of him speaking about his experience with this. It's short.
I asked them if there were other worlds, and they said, yeah, the universe is full of other worlds, and there are other dimensions of other physical universes, and those are filled with other worlds. So there's worlds in our physical universe. There's unlimited number of worlds, inhabited worlds with intelligent beings, and then there are other dimensions with worlds with them. So, beyond counting, beyond number, and that the action of God, the Word of God, the Son of God, the Christ, the Spirit of the Christ, has nothing is apart from that Spirit, and that Christ has been everywhere. Now, Jesus the carpenter wasn't Jesus the carpenter on every single one of these worlds, because in many of these worlds, our world is in the lower level of spiritual evolution, and in many of these worlds, Jesus didn't have to go to a world and be crucified and die on a cross for their sins, because there are worlds where people have chosen good and rejected evil and lived a life profoundly in the love of God and in the love of their neighbor. And so Jesus could go to these worlds and just bless them. And they were, happily accepted Jesus. I mean, what a different, can you imagine a world where Jesus came and people said, yes, we knew and understood this is what you wanted us to be, and we thank you for being our revelation, and we've known you from the beginning of time. We've known you and understood you and tried to live the way that you have, wanted us to live. There are worlds where people are perfectly good and have no sin and don't allow evil to be part of their lives. This world is unique because of the degree of not only temptation, but the willingness to accept temptation and failing the testing that we're in. When I asked to see what other intelligent beings look like, they paraded images of beings in front of me, and they started off as humans, and then they got a little stranger looking and a little stranger looking, and then they became unrecognizable as human beings and looked very weird. And I said, okay, I get it. They can be like shaped in very different ways. Fine, whatever, I get it. I mean, in other words, there's worlds where people have this kind of shape, but there's worlds where people take on very different kinds of shapes. But the shape of us in this world is of little importance, because in fact, what's important is our spiritual being. And who we ultimately truly are beings of light. We're beings of love. We are, in a sense, this tent that we live in now is not who we truly are. And in our immortal bodies, we're glorious. In this body, it's more like a little pup tent or prison that we're in.
Yeah, he named that really well. If I'm correct, what he was describing, and I've heard the same thing from other accounts, is the Earth is like basically the trash of creation, the trash of the universe, if you will. We're like the armpit, but we have one excuse, and that is that the fallen angels are imprisoned here in the Earth, and they affect us. And so that's why, in a sense, it was necessary for Jesus to become a human and to die on the cross on earth, whereas it wasn't necessary as much in other places. Not to mention, the redemption here redeems everything, everything in all the universes. And it goes back to that verse in the Bible where it says the first shall be last, and the last, the trash of the universe, will be first, in a sense. You see what I'm saying? And I'm not saying that's the full fulfillment of that scripture. I'm saying it's one fulfillment of that scripture, absolutely. And Jesus offers us that second chance. We were a condemned race because of our sinfulness of our forefathers against God, but Jesus offers us the second chance if we take hold of that gift, that opportunity, by following the 10 commandments, by trying to be beings of light and love, and for ourselves and for our neighbors, and not being selfish or just purely of the desires of the lower flesh, those kind of concepts, which the Bible says one's a path to heaven, one's a path to destruction, So the world today, Satanism, communism, they're always paths to destruction, self-destruction of the individual, of the family, of the society, of the country. It goes connected. It's absolutely encyclical. But anyway, I don't want to go too much of a rant on that. I just wanted to try and explain that. Also, to mention in that, I've got a friend of mine, a personal friend of mine, who he had a near-death experience, and he tells a very similar story about how he was taken to heaven, and he asked the Lord if there was other alien life, and they said yes. And he said he was able to speak to some of this alien life. He said one was like a insect that it was intelligent, and it didn't have a long lifespan, but they were able to communicate. And basically, he said when we talked to these other aliens that were in heaven, he said that they were real interested in what their perception of life was like on their world for their brief time. And that's something we don't understand enough, is how brief our time is. My mother just passed away. My father just passed away. My grandparents just passed away. My stepfather just passed away. Everybody thinks they have more time. They think that this life is not as brief as it is. But the thing is, it is brief. It is a test. And at the end of that test, we will be weighed on the scale, one side or the other, by our choices and our free will. If we have chosen to serve a life that is in line with good, or selfishness, which is the satanic path, isn't just serving Satan. God says to be in a relationship with me, follow the 10 commandments, where you put him above you and your desires. That's the proofs in the pudding with that. Whereas on the Luciferian way, they only have one rule: do what thou wills, the whole of the law. Well, that's the selfishness. Selfishness, self-love is Satanism, satanic. That's all it is. That's the test. So anyway, my friend said that the Lord sent him back, and he's got unfinished business. By the way, he's working on a book now about his story, like Howard Storm did. I'm trying to get that friend to come online here and let me interview him for a show. He's had his own show in the past. Many of y'all probably know him. I don't want to throw it out there without his permission, being I'm talking about personal stuff, but it has a beautiful, inspiring story. It took him 8 hours on the phone to explain it to me. I called him back and asked him to start over from scratch, and he explained the whole thing again without missing a beat. So I really hope I can get him on the phone in the future. He had a medical issue and is recovering from that. So when he feels stronger, he may come on. There's another source I found, and this is from a Catholic source, that I'll put out here too. It comes from a book called The End Times, as revealed by Marita Valtora, who I have read many of her works, and I absolutely love her works. Here's a thing on the short history on the writings of Maria Valtorta and how great they were. By the way, for those of you that know Mother Teresa of Calcutta, Mother Teresa, who was an inspiration to a lot of people, she's featured in this book, Life of Christ. And in this book, she speaks about how she was a big fan of the writings of Maria Valtorta. All right, as am I. In fact, of all the theological works I've ever read, aside from the scriptures, which of course is authoritative source in of itself on its own level, hers is the most uplifting and edifying information I've ever read. But again, back to her book. This is what she says, that the Lord spoke to her. And he said that, I got to get close to read this. But why they have never thought that the great Babylon is the whole earth itself. I would be a really small and limited God and creator had I created only the earth and its inhabitants. Now, again, that struck me because I've heard that same statement from multiple people that said that they met Christ and asked him about other life. And that was basically his response. I would be a very small God if you were the only thing I had created. He goes on. I can't even read that from here. He goes on to say that, I don't know. You can blow that up and read it. It's hard for me to read that small. Anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there real quick and just throw some sources before we dive into the subject matter of tonight. So I hope that didn't take up too much time. And now diving head first, and I don't know, something else, into the topic of the secret space program. In a nutshell, the United States created an off-world secret space program. Y'all have heard of Donald Trump during his service. He spoke of publicly, made international news about how we need to create a space force, right? Space fleet. Everyone's aware of that. Most people have heard that him make that statement or that it was in the news. Well, remember his grandfather was a part of the raid of Nikola Tesla's apartment. The government stole all his materials, all his sketches, writings, all of his theories, all of his models when he passed away. So a lot of our advanced technology today is based off of the work of Nikola Tesla, who was an absolute genius from Croatia, I believe, originally during the World War II time, was a contemporary of Einstein. All right. And he's the reason we don't give this man Einstein's a household name. Nikola Tesla isn't so much. But he pretty much invented radios, radar, electricity, remote control. I mean, and even now, advanced technologies, like super advanced technologies. He's pretty much he was the first man to put electricity to a town. They did it during a World Trade Fair. And that was all because of Nikola Tesla. So he's had an enormous impact on our world. And some of his students went on to create their own versions of UFOs that were confiscated by the government. There's stories about there. Look at a story of Robert Carr, I believe, Carr, Robert Carr, I believe, if I remember correctly, a long time. But anyway, yeah, we've had some super geniuses in the field, but basically, what Trump was trying to allude to, I believe, is the United States has had a secret space fleet since 1980. 1980. I mean, let that sink in for a second. NASA is a running joke. I mean, it's just a complete joke. I've seen 2 UFOs, and I had friends with me at both times that I saw them. Okay. chances are those aren't alien. They're ours. If you see UFOs today, 9 times out of 10, it's ours. Okay. These things, the thing is, they've decided to keep these programs top secret. And as I said many times before, if knowledge is power, and it is, the way you control power is you must control knowledge. All right. And also, love quoting almost every show, it seems, Plato, where he says, you can't know something you don't already know. And what that means is the way the human brain works is, unless the government and TV says all these things are real, it's very hard for the human brain to accept that these things could actually be real. But the truth is, our government lies, and they lie to us about doggone near everything, whether it's God, religion, whether it's just about anything, even mathematics. Mathematics, in many ways, are just designed to trap you in a catch-22 box. What they teach in universities and physics and what they teach at their own secret programs is 2 different worlds apart, you know? And if you develop advanced technology like Robert Carr, that down from Tesla, the government comes in and shuts you down. They shut you down. Again, controlling power. Someone creates a 0-point energy, they will come in and shut you down. You're not going to sell that. You're not going to make millions. You're not going to change the big oil and how we're running the world until they decide, oh, we're going to do it with, crypto and electric cars and all that trash, which wastes more fossil fuels than anything else, than what we're using now. It's just a rotten joke. But anyway, carbon, this whole stance, dude, carbon affects 3% of our atmosphere. How does that control our life, our world, and our planet? It doesn't. And a human effect on that, I'm sure there's some, but it's probably less than 1%. So that's all a rotten joke. And when I was a kid, they were saying, instead of global warming, they were saying, oh, we're going into an ice age. We're going into an ice age. It was all over the news. They were trying to panic everybody. Now, since remember Al Gore said that we'd all be underwater and the world would be destroyed by now in his Inconvenient Truth videos, right? Well, that turned out to be a bunch of BS, all right? So they got to come up with something new. So instead of new ice age, instead of global warming, now the new thing is, we're just going to call it climate change. That way we can wrap everything into it. It is nothing but control and you paying more taxes. And please explain to me how you paying more taxes is going to actually save carbon in the earth. And then all these things, these laws and rules they want to use for control to limit like your thermostat and what companies can produce. Well, the third world countries in China, they're all exempt from that. So why does China get a free pass? But yet we're going to go bankrupt trying to follow these policies. And some people point out the carbon that they're really trying to get rid of is us, that we're the problem. You know what I mean? With their whole depopulation, great reset, build back better, blah, 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 blah. You know what I mean? So you get the idea of what I'm saying, hopefully. Anyway, that said, getting back to topic, our government doesn't tell us the truth. And here's another thing I learned about being in the military. They don't give a flying crap about you. They don't. They only care about themselves and their own agendas. That's a lot like our politicians. You think they really care about us? If they cared about us, our world, our country would be a whole lot different, especially our borders, especially the immigration situation would be a whole lot different. They don't care. They care about agenda and padding themselves. They don't care about us. And that's part of the biggest problem. That's why they make laws that are different for them than they are for us. Like for you, it's illegal to do insider trading. For them, it's legal. Imagine that. They pass healthcare laws that affect us, but they don't affect them. I tell you what, you want to get rid of corruption? Number one, take away that rule and make it that they've got to follow the same laws that they say we have to follow, that they make for us. That's number one. Number two, you want to get rid of corruption? Stop allowing them to get rich off their jobs. They shouldn't be able to walk in there, not even worth $1 million and coming out being worth 4, 10, 20 million. All right? Obama. You know what I mean? Excuse me. How many times has that happened? That's nothing but corruption. I mean, nothing. And how is it, again, back to insider trading, can you chair these major committees of corporations, and then next thing you know, when you leave Congress, you're now working for those agencies with cushy, expensive jobs? No, all corruption. It's corruption. And if we want to fix our country, we've got to get rid of the corruption. And I tell you what, I'm going off a tangent here. I apologize. But the biggest corruption in our country is damn communism, socialism, communism. That's not a part of America. That's not a part. America is against socialism and communism. Yet it seems like government, media, education today, it's only indoctrination camps of teaching young children with impressionable minds to be sucked into communism. You're right. And that is not American. That is not American at all. Neither is this whole censorship thing. One of my shows 2 shows ago was censored because I talked about things that might have been in the thing that could affect your health and your lives, you know? And so they removed that. Censorship also is not American. It's part of communism. It's not American. You might not agree with somebody, but if someone doesn't agree with me, that's fine. No one has forced to believe me or listen to me. Just turn the channel, go somewhere else. You know, if you're not being fed, go somewhere else. You know, this is for the people that do feel that way and do understand that. But anyway, I digress. Getting back to this secret space program. America does have a secret space program. So here's how it works. First of all, I'm going to bring up Roswell. The reason why I'm going to bring up Roswell is because Roswell is pretty much a household name, and it plays into our topic tonight. That was kind of a launching board, if you will. If I can scroll here and find the articles. Okay, so if you go to Roswell, and I have on a few occasions, they have a little museum there. And one of the things they have in the museum is they got a wall full of papers. And when Roswell first took place, they sent a Air Force officer from the 509th. Okay, now the 509th, this is no small group. They're the ones that were responsible for dropping the bombs on Japan during World War II. So this is a highly educated intelligence section. Well, they sent Major Jessup Marcel. I always say Marcel. I don't know if it's Marcel or Major Jessup Messup. I don't know. One of those. Anyway, they sent Major Marcel to look at Max Brazel's ranch. And it was Major Marcel who said there's an alien craft here, a UFO crash. He reported that to the public and to his superiors, and it made national news, national attention. Okay. There were different newspaper articles that ran across the entire country that the U.S. had found a alien UFO crash. Okay. Well, when Major Marcel went back to the office to report to his command, they grabbed him right away, ushered him in a room, and said, listen, you need to recant your story and say that it was a balloon crash. Okay. They brought him straight into this room, and they had him pick up this Mylar material and claim that that's what they found. Oh, I don't know what an alien crash looks like. It just turned out to be a balloon. Oh, and it wasn't alien bodies. Yeah, we don't know what an alien body would look like. It turned out it was a wooden dummy. And I'm too stupid to know the difference between a wooden dummy and an alien, or a weather balloon crash, or an alien UFO. Yeah, whatever. BS. This is when the government started the strategy of we're going to lie to the public. All right. That's what happened. If you see this red square he's holding right there in the picture, it's somebody drew an outline of the square over this. In his hands, he's holding a report. Major Jessup Marcel is holding a report that he was given to his commander when they rushed him in this briefing room for this press briefing and ambushed him and said, you got to now lie under orders and say it was a weather balloon. Well, with modern technology, they've been able to zoom in on that paper that he's holding in his hand. And right there, they determined, I'm only showing parts of this, I've got more, but it basically says that they are going to lie and say it was weather balloons instead of a UFO crash. Also, the report said that it was a crashed wreck and they recovered victims, aka aliens, from the crash. And then they went on to explain where they were transporting these crash materials from the UFOs and the aliens. Okay. Also, I'm pretty sure this is not a typical item you would find on a weather balloon. All right. This is parts of the UFO crash that they preserved and, codified, whatever. And one of the things they point out is these are kind of like control panels where the aliens will put their hands on these devices. And it's worth noting they have 6 fingers. All right. Almost like the Nephilim of the past, hint, hint, they have 6 fingers to operate these things. And they had actual parts of debris, not just whatever. Now, to continue on with the story a little bit, first of all, because the government lied and covered all this up, and by the way, they threatened Max Brazel. They threatened a lot of people disappeared flat out. One nurse that worked on the alien autopsy reported to her boyfriend, who happened to be he happened to work for the coroner's office. He was the coroner of the town. And he said that he got a strange call from the government saying, hey, if there's, potentially little bodies, how do we preserve those bodies in a chamber without, destroying the tissue? And he's like, what? And they're like, yeah, never mind. We'll figure it out. Thanks. Oh, forget we called. And he's like, what? His girlfriend turned out to be a nurse that was present at the alien autopsies. And when she spoke to him in a bar later, where she drew out a picture on a napkin of what these things look like, and that woman disappeared. She's gone. And there's a lot of people that disappeared. And other people said that they were threatened that if they didn't shut up, they were going to be made to disappear too. I'm sure we've never heard anything like this from our own government before. No, not at all. In fact, if I disappear, you all know why. And if anyone ever says I was suicided, that's complete BS. That will never happen. That's against my faith. All right. So, and not only that, I like life just too much. So that's not happening. Now, so Roswell went away. The story basically went away. It was not a household name. People didn't know a lot about it. Over time, things died down until this man. All right, Stanton Freeman. All right. Now, Stanton Freeman is an amazing and unique individual, and sadly, he has passed away. If you watched my last show with the great L.A. Marzulli, which I really appreciate for coming on the channel, he brought up Stanton Freeman, and because they had worked together with their team on removing alien implant chips from people. And you can hear L.A. Marzulli talk about that in my last episode if you didn't see it. All right. So that's huge. Well, Stanton Freeman, who removed those chips, and they also said many of them were made of metals that were not of this earth. They also said, I've got some videos of Stanton Freeman pulling out these chips from people from L.A. Marzulli's, from his videos. And in there, they said that the technology actually like ran away from the tools, the metal tools they were using to try and extract them. Like they try to run and move and hide kind of thing. It was really difficult to get them. Anyway, Time Magazine did an issue with Stanley Freeman and on the Roswell files. And the reason why is they go on to explain, first of all, who Stanley Freeman was. He was a former physicist, nuclear physicist, I believe, who ended up becoming like one of the first major UFO researchers. And the article goes on to explain that he was in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, right here. and they told him that, hey, remember Major Marcel from the Roswell crash? Well, he retired right here in Baton Rouge. So Stanley Freeman located him. All right. He located him, and he talked him into doing an interview with him. And from that interview, Major Marcel says, right here in his face shown in the picture here, he said that he was forced under orders to lie to the public by a superior officer about a weather balloon. And he said it absolutely was not a weather balloon. He's told Stanton Freeman that it was an alien crash, that they did recover aliens, they did recover debris, et cetera, et cetera. His son, Major Marcel's son, even said in multiple interviews that his dad came home that night with some of the technology from the crash, the material, and it said it exhibited properties like nothing else on this earth. And he let his son look at some of the hieroglyphs that they found and some of the metal they found and things like that. But we really owe Stanton Freeman, because he is the man that made Roswell a household name and brought it back to the public, and it became a major storm from that time on. Okay. Now, I won't go into a whole lot of this. I might do a future episode on this, but just so people know and have an idea of this, okay? Close Encounters of the Third Kind. What happened as a result of Roswell? Here's how the story goes, and I won't spend a lot of time on it, but just to go into a little bit. Here's how the story goes. Our government, actually, it was two UFOs, we believe, that crashed. They hit each other and flew to different locations. They recovered bodies. They recovered one body that was still alive, one living alien. His name, they gave him a name, EBE1, Eben 1, all right? Extra biological entity 1, or extraterrestrial biological entity 1. So Eben 1. He was injured due to injuries due to the crash. However, our government was able to recover some of the communication equipment from the UFO. And the Eben 1 was able to use that communication to contact his people. Our government said, call your people and ask them to send a rescue ship to come get you. Call home, ask for a rescue. So he did. He said that he was in a crash, that our government was trying to help him, and requested they send a rescue ship. They said with their current technology, it would take them 2 years to be able to get back to Earth. Well, sadly, 1 year into that 2 years, the Eben 1 died as a result of his injuries. But by that time, our government was able to figure out how to, number one, work the communications device, and number two, they were able to work out a part of their language enough to communicate in a very rudimentary level. It'd be like, trying to speak to a very young child. I mean, you can try to make out what the person's trying to say, but it's not going to sound too legible, or educated. But it's like going to a different country when you're just learning a language, I mean, I can get by with other languages, but I'm not going to sound like I'm speaking fluently, but I can speak enough to where I can communicate, Anyway, that said, our government made a deal with the alien craft and said, listen, since you're already halfway here, no sense in just turning around and going home. Why don't you continue to come and we'll do an exchange program? Well, some poor little alien on their ship drew the short straw and got left here. That became known as Eben 2. All right. And then the United States sent a group of, it's argued, but 10 to 12 people back in an exchange program in a landing in the New Mexican desert in the U.S. All right. And many claim that was what was represented in the famous movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind at the end of the movie, where you see Richard Dreyfuss doing the exchange program, okay, where he went off with the aliens and they had a whole crew to go off with these aliens. Now, this became known as Project Serpo, all right? And Carrie Cassidy, with her fantastic show, Project Camelon, she's been in, her and Ryan was one of the progenitors, I believe, in putting out Serpo.org, okay, which they gave a lot of information on this at one time. It has been shut down in recent years, unfortunately. And these scientists or astronauts or military personnel, whatever you want to call them, that went off to this planet Serpo They were supposed to spend 10 years and return here for debriefing. Well, they ended up spending like 12 years there because their physics were different than ours. So it was kind of like Einstein's theory of relativity, right? Gravity affects things differently in different areas, in different space and time, etc. So they had a hard time keeping up with time, actual time. Not to mention, we're on a 24-hour basic day. Planet Serpo, their race was on something like a 36-hour at planet day. So that really messed things up too. They said, by the way, the food was horrendous. That was one of the two hardest things that the team said that they had to deal with was number one, the food, and number two, the heat. They came to our desert because it matched their planet. Their planet was they had a much smaller population. It was a militant population. And they had religion, which I found was interesting. But basically, these scientists / military astronaut personnel, they wrote journals where they had to record everything they did on a daily basis. Just like how in the Avatar, they got to do these video presentations. They're like, I don't feel like doing it. They're like, shut up and do it, man. It's part of science. Just get on. Just say something. What do I say? Just talk. That old thing. But because it was older, they had to do journals, right? So a lot of those journals were released. I read a lot of them, and they were fantastic. Now, I will say there's been a lot of modern things to say that to try to debunk Project Serpo and say that it was all BS. All right. You got to be real careful in the world of intelligence, because the one thing intelligence like to do is disinformation. And disinformation isn't just putting out bogus stories. A lot of times it's saying that alien crashes are actually weather balloons. So just because somebody comes out and debunks something doesn't mean it wasn't true. All right. I've heard multiple sources, at least two I know of for sure, that confirmed the story of Project Serpo with the returning astronauts that were basically living as retirees hidden in subdivisions that no one had a clue who they were. And they were just old people, trying to just live out peacefully and quietly. And I've heard of two sources that have had contact with them, seeing pictures, artifacts, photos from the alien planet, that gave testimony that this stuff actually was real and took place. So like I said, you got to be careful. The reason I bring up, and I don't want to go deep into that story or time and all that. There's a lot more you could pursue on that. Try to look up. There's a book called Expedition of Planet Serpo, something like that. I've got a book around here like that. But anyway, the reason I go into that is because what happened with the Roswell crash was very important for the United States, because we started an exchange program and communication system with an off-world intelligence. And we exchanged technology. We exchanged, I'm sure, artifacts and engineering and tools and knowledge. That was huge. And there's major advancements in that. In fact, I don't know if I have that here queued up. Man, I tell you how many, it took me hours and hours just to add, queue up this stuff I want to show you. I'm not seeing it offhand here, but there are military personnel in the U.S. that were known high-level people. They've written books. You can go back and research them. They will tell you their job was to take alien technology and try to feed it into our corporations in ways that they thought it would fit. Like, for example, if you're working on something that was similar, they would give you something that was advanced from this alien technology that would help advance you and your company by, just light years. There's an example of that with the movie Terminator. Was it Terminator Termination or Terminator 2 or whatever? When, remember, they had the arm encased, and they're like, oh yeah, man, this helped our technology and advancements by many years, having this artifact, right? Well, it's exactly like that. Truth is often stranger than fiction, right? So the reason I mention all that is because and that military officer, I wish I did queue up his information. I meant to. I might try and do it in another show. But he went on to say that many of the technologies that we take for granted today all came from back engineering alien technology from crashes like Roswell. Microwave ovens, Velcro, um, night vision goggles, um, circuit boards that we use in transistors in our radios and in our computers. I mean, all that they said was back engineered from what they discovered in these things. Another major one was fiber optic things, advance all kinds of advancements that they say that bulletproof vests. Another thing, they say all this was from back engineering these technologies, and that's their words. You can go back and read their books and study their lives and see, and it's not just me making it up or just saying some conspiracy theory. you know Anyway, this is researchable stuff. So that said, the reason I bring all that up is because what happened is the same thing happened. Now the Roswell crash took place in 1947, all right, in New Mexico, in Roswell, New Mexico. The same thing happened, though, to the Nazis in the 30s, before Roswell. There was an alien crash, and they were able to make communication with an alien race. And with that communication, they were able to advance their technology, their science, all right? Because the secret space program started not with America, it started with the Nazis in World War II. They were way, way ahead of us, all right? Now, they were ahead of us for two reasons. And again, this goes back to our original discussion when we started. They were asked how it was they were so advanced. One was because they were in contact with an alien race that was helping them back engineer their technology. Number two, they said that they also were involved in the occult, and they channeled entities that gave them knowledge. All right. That's bad. I mean, you're talking about satanic stuff there. All right. Whenever you get into that kind of stuff, you're opening yourselves up to the dark forces, dark spirits, dark influences. So when they told that to our government, what do you think our government did out of a lust for power? They jumped in bed with the devil and started getting involved in the occult, Satanism, call it whatever you want. They started conjuring demons like Elon Musk talks about. He says they conjure these things in the billionaire elite clubs. They conjure demons. That's what he says. And those demons tell him, we'll make you gods if you kill off the rest of humanity, all of us. Why is that? You know what I'm saying? But anyway, Elon at one time, if you remember, was talking about warning the public about that. Now, he got some threats for him and his family and his companies, and he backed off. So, but he was making those warnings at one time and warning us, especially about AI and the dangers, which he said is greatly more dangerous than nuclear bombs, which we regulate, yet we're not regulating the AI, which is stupid. Anyway, so it was the Nazis that first came up with this technology by back engineering through their relationship with an alien race. Now, the alien race they were in contact with, let's see if I can find my next guy here. This is not an alien race. This is William Tomkins. All right. Now, sadly, he's passed away just a few years ago as well. Mr. Tomkins, he worked for the Navy. All right. And one thing he was famous for with the Navy is he was a model designer. Well, many of his personal models went on to actually create our aircraft carriers and things that our government actually built out based on his designs and things like that. But one thing about Mr. Tomkins is he was also in naval intelligence. And he said that during World War II, the U.S. government had spies. We had at least 12 spies that were working inside of the Nazi government. All right. And inside the Nazi government, these spies were coming back and feeding us information about what it was that they were seeing. Okay. And so William Tomkins said, now there are 12 spies that he sat in on meetings to debrief. And he said, among these spies, none of those spies knew each other. Okay, none of them had any idea who the identity of another one was, but yet they all said the same thing. They all said that the Nazis were working on back engineering UFOs with an alien or intelligent alien race. And they all described that alien race as being reptilians. Like they had a humanoid upright body, but scales and green or brown color with the reptilian face like a lizard. And that's what all 12 of them said, that they were working with a reptilian race, and that this reptilian alien race was helping them back engineer these aircraft. Okay. And now, fast forward a little bit, you have the end of World War II. Okay. So we get in there, the Allied forces are able to get in there, and they're able to destroy and wipe out Germany. And we were able to bring an end to the war. Okay. Well, one of the things that was really interesting is we try to confiscate anything that we could as a result of going in there. And one of the things we found, and this is also, there's been History Channel shows about this, but this is on Discovery Channel. You have this thing called the bell, commonly referred to as the bell. In German, it's called the Glocker, like Glocks. It means bell, all right? Austrian German, Glock, bell, the Glocker. This bell was a propulsion system that the Nazis were working on. And here's an example of it. They would chain it to walls, concrete walls. And as they keyed off this propulsion, funny lights would show up, and it would start to elevate off the ground and stuff like that. So this basically turned out to be a propulsion system that they used in their aircraft. Okay. That they were back engineering. Now, fast forward a little bit more. At the end of the war, it became known to American intelligence agencies that many of the Nazis had fled away from Germany to hide Allied forces and escape, and they were building a base in Antarctica. Okay, that base in Antarctica was called New Schwabenland, New Berlin, or New Schwabenland, okay, by the Germans in Antarctica. So, United States says, no, we are not letting the Nazis get away. So we called upon this man. This man is Admiral Bird. Admiral Bird, who represented the 4th U.S. Naval Fleet. And Admiral Bird was given orders to go down to Antarctica, to New Schwabenland, and wipe out these Nazi presence there, destroy the Nazi base. And he took the entire 4th Naval Fleet to do that. Well, there's one little problem with that, and that is that we got our butts kicked. We, American forces, the 4th Naval Fleet, got their butts handed to them by what they described as UFOs, some of them with Nazi symbols on them, which was really weird. All right. So there are accounts that Admiral Bird gave in his journal where this UFO fleet comes out of nowhere, some with Nazi symbols on them, and just destroyed the 4th Naval Fleet like it was, eating a pile of pancakes. I mean, absolutely nothing. And this is all stuff that you can go and research as true to history. It might take a little digging, but it's all real. It's all true. Now, something else that really struck me as a result of this, all right? Now, that was Admiral Bird. What would other generals and admirals in the U.S. military have to say after this incident? Well, here's one from one of our greatest generals ever, General MacArthur. All right. General MacArthur said, "You now face a new world, a world of change. We speak in strange terms of harnessing the cosmic energy, of ultimate conflict between a united human race and the sinister forces of some other planetary galaxy. The nations of the world will have to unite, for the next war will be an interplanetary war. The nations of the earth must someday make a common front against attack by people from other planets. General MacArthur, October 8th, 1955. See what I'm saying? And that's very reminiscent later on that I'll swing back to of another very interesting talk by this man. Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bond. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. And he went on in that speech to say, and are we not facing that threat right now? Right now. Now, I'll make a correlation here. The U.S. is under invasion right now from alien forces crossing our border. Many carrying cards that say they're recognized as UN military soldiers. Many Chinese forces too, which is a major enemy of ours, that say that they're going to destroy and take over our country. Yet, we're being invaded, but nothing's being done about it. And it's not being talked about. It's certainly not in those terms. Well, imagine an alien force. So if Admiral Bird had that experience with an alien force, and then which they were Nazis working with aliens, and then General MacArthur makes that same statement that then later Reagan made. Why isn't the Earth hasn't unified for that effect yet? Could it be because we signed treaties with these governments, these alien governments, that we would keep all of this silenced, hush hush, and whistleblowers silenced, executed? Because there's many stories of such things. And again, it's all about control and power. And knowledge is power. So what do you have to control? Knowledge. See, we're trapped in a box on what you're allowed to think. You see, what you're allowed to believe. And if you speak outside the norm, then you're ridiculed, you're attacked. You're called a conspiracy theorist. You know, by the way, do you know where the term conspiracy theorist actually came from? That was a term created by the CIA during the Kennedy assassination. A lot of people were calling foul during the Kennedy assassination as a psyops way of shutting those people up. The government and the CIA came up with the idea, we're going to put out this term conspiracy theory to make it seem like, oh, you're a bad person or you're a crazy person for actually questioning anything the government says to you and tell you, even though they've been proven to lie to us and not have our best interests at heart over and over and over and over and over again. But don't worry, keep listening to our lies. The United States was founded on a country that didn't trust or believe in big government. Why are people doing that today? It's not like they're better. In fact, Thomas Jefferson said the biggest problem with government is it growing too big. The whole idea was to have small government, that states had more rights, you know, that we didn't have a strong centralized government, you know, that was the whole part of it. And then Thomas Jefferson went on to say the greatest threat to the country is a government that starts to ignore the Constitution. Well, imagine that. Look at all these trials going on where we're just attacking political opponents and we're abusing the judicial system to do that. How about the censorship? Same thing. Oh, we're not censoring you. We're allowing the means of communication of reaching the public. We're going to allow those private companies to censor you, right? Like, it's not the same thing. How about the Patriot Act? You ever read the Patriot Act or the National Defense Authorization Act? This is how it reads. Number 1, takes away your constitutional right. Number 2, takes away your constitutional right. Number 3, takes away your constitutional right. Number 4, takes away your constitutional right. Number 5, takes away your constitutional right. I ask you, do we have a free country? Do we have freedom? Because we certainly don't have a damn constitution left. Because if they can revoke it at any time under any executive order or some BS law that they pass, then you don't have a right to a constitution. You don't have freedom. The writing is on the wall. What we have is a war against the people. All right. But anyway, back to the space topic. I can get off topic easy, but it's important. People have got to understand this stuff. Everything's about control in the box. And if you can't understand that, you'll never be able to understand the space stuff. So the Nazis created a space program. Booyakasha. All right. That's from a photograph. That's from an image from that same photograph. All right. It is a Nazi UFO. Now, here's something that's interesting. Notice these gun turrets on this UFO, supposed UFO, right? Back engineered craft, whatever you want to call it. When they first put gun turrets on these, they had a lot of problems with them. And that was, once you start shooting a gun, it becomes a propulsion system. So if you're in a zero-G environment, it's impossible to shoot, because once you start shooting it, it moves your ship. So you can't stay on target. It becomes impossible. So they had to switch from machine guns that were common to actually, that was their first thought, load these things out with machine guns, right? But that didn't work. So they had to advance their technology, which they weren't ready for yet, to energy-based weapons. And all of the advanced technology today, the majority, not all the majority of the advanced technology we have today, as far as weapons platforms, they're energy-based platforms. That's why the Nazis had a fleet of these UFOs that they were intending to win the war with. Hitler was talking about that. Oh, we've got this amazing secret technology that's going to destroy and end the war for us, right? He wasn't kidding. The problem is we were able to destroy them before they could figure out how to truly arm these things with the energy weapons. But by the time Admiral Bird with the Fourth Fleet went to invade New Schwabenland, well, they were up to speed enough by that point that they were able to turn that the U.S. naval fleet into Swiss cheese in a matter of minutes. All right. Here's some. This is an artist rendition of the Nazi fleet. Notice the Volkswagen bug under there, the little beetle bug, slug bug. Another picture rendition. This one's really neat. This one you can see turrets on it, but like I said, those turrets didn't work well back then at that time until they developed energy weapons. This is another one. I love this one because this is taken from an aircraft. You can see the light transmission there and over a forest with these things. So that's a really interesting photo that I like. So the Nazis created this fleet of UFOs, and like I said, they couldn't arm them fast enough to win the war. But they did when we sent the Fourth Naval Fleet. Now, the Nazis allowed Admiral Bird to live on purpose, and they allowed him to come back because they sent him back with a message to the U.S. government saying that they wanted to sit down and do a treaty. They wanted to do a deal with the U.S. government. And a few years later, that started to materialize. And this is the next major event that took place. This happened on July 29th on 1952. Boom. All right. What do you see there? Those are not alien UFOs. That is the Nazi fleet showing their force. All right. They publicly in 1952 in Washington, D.C. in July 29th, they showed up. Actually, this says on the 12th on here. I got a newspaper clipping of the 29th, I believe. But anyway, 1952, they came and traveled across and hovered around the Capitol, and thousands of people witnessed this. Here's a rendition of someone that they claim took photos of that night. Now, one thing to keep in mind, there was no such thing as Photoshop in 1952. Okay. So people claim these are all real. This isn't made up stuff. This is all real. There are thousands of people that were walking on Pennsylvania Avenue who saw these things take place. So much so that the United States government did a press release about it. I've seen the press release. And in the press release, they admitted that they were UFOs And at the time, they thought they were otherworldly. And they said that we don't believe that they're here to cause any kind of a threat to us. I mean, that's pretty much what they said in the briefing. I've seen the briefing a couple of times. It's been a long time. But that's what they said basically in the press briefing. Then here's a newspaper article that ran saucers over Washington, D.C. that talked about the incident. This was a very real incident that took place. Of course, all of us have no memory of the 1950s. It's fallen out of public knowledge. Here's another newspaper clipping. Saucer swarm over U.S. Capitol. And in this one, if you can screenshot it or zoom in on it, this is the one I believe says it was July 29th of 1952. And goes into a little more detail about that. So what happened here? This is what happened. So this is not long after Admiral Bird was defeated in the Antarctica. And remember, he was sent back to make a deal with our government. Well, the footage I just showed you was the Nazi fleet from Antarctica. They came and made a show of force. They wanted to get our leadership's attention, to which they did. So we sat down, our government sat down in negotiations with them, and we made a deal with the devil, essentially. And here's what happened. The Nazis said, look, we know you want this technology and you want it bad. All right. And here's our problem. Because you destroyed Germany, you pretty much knocked it back to the Flintstones. You destroyed all our manufacturing base in Germany. So there's no way we can repair or build out our fleet to the standards or our desires of what we want to do. So we're going to make a deal. We will give the United States government this back engineered alien UFO technology if you build us out a Nazi fleet. They wanted to build out more ships. They didn't have enough for their people. They wanted to build out more, and probably more advanced ones, et cetera, because they were still in, the early stages. So they wanted to build out bigger and better and stuff like that. But they had no means to do it, so they were going to use us. In cooperation, they would give us the technology. Now, there was one other caveat. The Germans are some smart people. I will hand them that. I'm part German too. A little bit, but still part German. They are some very intelligent people. I'll give them that. And they've got some great scientists and engineers. I don't like the ethical sides or moral sides of a lot of the stuff. And that doesn't mean that they're all bad either. I've met plenty of Germans that are fantastic people. But anyway, I don't like any group or people that are, that are immoral or don't care about human life or just evil people. I like people who are good people. And there's good people in every race, every world, blah, 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 blah. The whole shindig thing, and there's trash in every one of them too. So anyway, that said, the Germans were really smart because they also said in this deal that as a part of this deal, they wanted these particular Germans, to be placed in every major corporation and all the major corporations around the world. Like they wanted people in the head of those departments. And that was brilliant because not only did they create their own super spy network by doing that, intelligence, but they also created that they were on top of technology as well, and had their pulse on everything that was going on the technological side. So huge. That was really intelligent on their part. And of course, we would have sold our grandmother to get that alien technology, which we did. And so we did. We made the deal with them. So here's what happened. When we made the deal with the Nazis, the U.S. government doesn't have the ability to then build out this stuff, even though they gave us the plans and the designs and help and experience. We did not have the wherewithal to be able to actually build this technology. And that brings us to our next point. But I've got to leave for just a second. So give me a minute. I'll be right back. All right, sorry about that. Um, so where was I? So when our government started this, we did not have the technology to build out these ships. So what our government did at that point was it went out to um, we went out to basically our major manufacturing companies and propulsion companies, and we created aerospace propulsion companies like Bell, like Lockheed Martin, and things like that. And because it's government, they compartmentalize everything. So the idea with compartmentalizing things was, you have different sections working on different parts so that no one has the overall part kind of thing's the idea to keep the secrecy, air of secrecy up. Well, unfortunately, that worked to a degree. We were able to create these. That's where these black budget programs came up. And that's where these black budget, aerospace things came up, and it was successful to a degree. We were able to accomplish the goals we set out to accomplish. We were able to build out the Nazi fleet that they requested, which is part of our deal. Then after that, we went on to build out the first United States military space program. It was run by the military, and it was known as Solar Warden. Okay, Solar Warden. All right, and Solar Warden's it's like the police of our solar system idea. That's the idea of Solar Warden, and that's what they did. They pretty much policed. The idea of Solar Warden is to challenge any craft coming in our solar system, pretty much from the sun to around Saturn. After Saturn, you start getting much deeper into our solar system, and then on out to deep space after that. So we weren't really set up for that, especially in the early parts of the program. But the first space program ever created, off-world program, was the Nazi program. And I'll swing back to that in a second. And the second space fleet that was ever created on Earth was the U.S. military program named Solar Warden. Now, we thought we could trust these black site, corporations. The problem is all the corporations are controlled by all the globalists. All right. And the globalists have their own little party billionaires club, like we talked about earlier with Elon Musk, right? They kind of do their own thing, and they don't care for government. They care about themselves. Back to that whole selfish thing. So they decided they banded together, unbeknownst to the government, and they worked together and they built out their own space fleet. That became the third space fleet, Space Force. And that is called the ICC, the International Corporate Conglomerate. And it acts as like the East India Trading Company of outer space. Like, for example, for those that might not know the East India Trading Company, it was like one of the first world corporate powers, that pretty much ruled everything. Really, they were and could bully out anybody. They were shown in the movie series Jack Sparrow, the Pirates of the Caribbean. Remember how they ended up coming after him, kind of thing? That was the East India Trading Company. They were a super powerful corporation, and they were very Hey, sorry about that. My internet connection just booted me out. It just decided it was going to stop working all of a sudden, and I got kicked out. I always have technical problems, and it's something new like every time of something different that I have to deal with. So it's always a problem. Me and technology, we don't get along that well for some reason. I don't know what it is. But anyway, back to the story. So we were having this huge technical. Okay, so the first space program was created by the Nazis through us. Well, they created their own, but we furthered that by making the deal with the devil. Second is we built out the second space fleet, which was Solar Warden, the U.S. Space program, secret space program. The third was the ICC, the International Corporate Conglomerate. And what they did, like I said, was the corporations banded together that built all this, and they created their own system and for their own ends. So that was the first three. Now, what happened is, over time, intelligence agencies around the world started to realize and understand that the United States had a secret space program. You can't keep secrets from intelligence sources for very long. People are not stupid, and there's several intelligence agencies around the world. So these other intelligence agencies figured out what was going on, and they approached the U.S. and they're like, what the heck? So the U.S. said, okay, calm down. Tell you what, we've already been down this road. We'll make a deal. Let's make a deal, So they said, we will build you the international agencies, the space program. If you sign a contract that you will follow our rules, all right? And part of our rules is you got to keep all this secret. The public can't know about it. By the way, that brings me to something I meant to say earlier. My own uncle I got an uncle who worked for, he graduated Texas Tech, and he worked on satellites and did defense contracts. He worked on some of his own technology that was kind of, in a way, advanced technology at the time. And the government came in and shut him down and said, you can no longer work on this technology here. You cannot. And you hear that often in these programs. Anytime someone comes up with like free energy or alternative energy, especially for vehicles and power, the government comes in and shuts it down and takes their stuff. There was one story I heard in college about a man, right now we run pretty much on nuclear power for most part. And there was a man that invented four models of fusion reaction. Fusion energy is the next evolutionary step beyond nuclear power. Right now, with nuclear power, look at Chernobyl, look at Fukushima. It's very dangerous. You can have a meltdown and it can cause some major problems. However, fusion is much cleaner. So you don't have the same fallout from fusion reactions, from my understanding. So that being said, this man, the scientist, created 4 fusion reactors to prove that this works, this technology. And he thought he was going to change the world. Well, no, the government came in and shut him down. And he said, well, let me sell it to the government. I'm sure y'all are interested in this. And they're like, nope, we don't care. And he said the only reason they wouldn't care is because they already had it. They already had it. They just didn't want us to have it. I worked in Hollywood. I trained as a writer and producer in Los Angeles, and worked in various levels as an executive assistant through the business on television and other areas. And one thing I learned there, if your script is a competition, they'll buy it just to shelve it so that it just doesn't get out there. They have money. They don't care about money. They're very happy to. It's control is the thing, right? So they're very happy to do that. Or they'll stick your stuff in development hell, and it just won't go anywhere for large numbers of years. But anyway, getting back to the space program. So again, Nazis created the first fleet, the first off-world fleet. The Solar Warden with the U.S. military created the second. the ICC, International Corporate Conglomerate of the globalist companies and the offsite black budget companies, created their own using that information and technology and created the ICC. Then the world's intelligence agency started to realize that we had our own space program, and we made a deal with them that we will build them out a space fleet if they follow our orders and treaties, and to which they especially silence for in control. So they did that. Now, that one is specifically, from my understanding, known as the SSP, the Secret Space Program. And it involves, they actually have offices through the UN. The UN has Space Command offices and has for a long time. And they have representatives of every country on this planet that work on those programs. The major, probably more from the major countries, powers, superpowers, if you will. But every race is represented in that program, and that is typically referred to as the SSP, Secret Space Program. Secret Space Program, now that refers to them specifically, but Secret Space Program also is out of a blanket coverall for everything in the stuff that we're referring to. But Solar Warden, now Solar Warden was from what I understand, is the old name. The military likes to change names on stuff, so it's probably not called Solar Warden today, but it absolutely was called Solar Warden in the past. All right. I don't know if it's the same or if it's changed. But and of course the Nazi ones are the Nazis. Apparently we got in a big fight with the Nazis over some technology, and it was mind wiping technology. The Nazis had gotten technology that can wipe your memory, just like, you know, the movie Men in Black, right? Where they pull out these little pins and it flashes you, right? They have, it's not like that. In fact, they said it looks like a little hammer. Honestly, if you were to describe it, it looks like a little hammer, like a little rock hammer. And they said that, but they have this technology and it can wipe your mind. And the Nazis had it, and they didn't have many of them at the time, so they were very guarded with it. The U.S. came up with a plan to basically hijack one of the Nazi ships and steal this technology, which they did, apparently, according to one story. They did that, and the Nazis got very angry and attacked us back, and some of our ships that exploded and stuff like that, as a means of getting us back, and they let us know why. But apparently the Germans got really angry and they left the planet, gone. And they moved to basically the moon, Mars, and some other areas over time. But they largely populated on bases on Mars. All right. From what I was told back in the day, and this is very old now, but I was told that we had over 250 bases already built out on Mars since the end of World War II to now, kind of thing. And that's old news. That could be a lot more now. One thing that's interesting is there's a lot of infighting between these corporations, between the Nazi fleet, the Solar Warden, the ICC, and probably the SSP. There's a lot of infighting. So sometimes we're at war with each other. Other times we're all working together and playing nice. There's a lot of inner conflict. There's a lot of agendas of what people going on. I think over time they found it's much easier to work together than it is to fight against each other all the time. But there's still conflicts that come up all the time. That's not just like on Earth. Same thing. They just took our drama and put it up there. I think we got problems here, right? But anyway, getting back to this, so that's the basic premise of the space fleet. And like I said, it was in 1980, 1981 when Solar Warden was first launched out. One thing I want to stop and take a second to let people be aware of here for a second, okay? This is a rough picture of the Milky Way. The Milky Way is our galaxy, right? Now, at the center of every galaxy, you'll notice, is a supermassive black hole, all right? And it's funny because it's a supermassive black hole that spits out all this material that creates our galaxy. But then over time, some say that it sucks it back in slowly over time. So it's like a progression out and then a recession in turn. But there's different theories on that model. Notice that there's if this was like a hand and you spin it, right? There's different fingers of this galaxy. They say, are one of the, see where it says our solar system there at the bottom? We are on one of the outer galaxies, outer fingers, outer swirls, fingers, whatever you want to call it, of this galaxy. The reason we know this is because we see a lot of black in our sky and a lot of stars. If we were closer to the inside where it's so much brighter, you wouldn't see black. All you would see is more light, so that's one of the ways they know we're on the outside of this, other than actual just going out physical mapping with the space program. Now, this is one galaxy. This comprises the Milky Way. And the Milky Way galaxy is now they're always changing the numbers on this, and it's always going up. But some of the last numbers I heard is they estimate that there's approximately 250 million stars that comprise an average galaxy like ours. So 250 million stars. Just think for a second how absolutely enormously large and big that actually is. All right. And now we've got 9 planets, 8 if you take Pluto, right? That whole deal with Neil deGrasse Tyson getting rid of Pluto as a planet, saying it's too small. But if you take that into consideration, we've got 9 planets. Okay. How many of those 250 billion stars also have revolving planets? It's theorized that most of them do in that. So how many would fall in the what they call the Goldilocks zone, where you're close enough to the sun, but far away enough from it to where it's not destroying you. You know what I'm saying? That the Goldilocks zone, and that you have a planet that contains water. They've already said that like 4 light years away from us is another Earth that's bigger, that has water and is in that Goldilocks zone. So, the chances of life being there are enormous. So that's now this is one galaxy. All right. Just one galaxy out there. So this is something else I want you to think about for a second. This picture here is one of my favorite pictures. These are not stars at all. What you're looking at is galaxies. All right. So like when we look in the night sky, all we see is stars that look very similar to this. But when you step back far enough, and this was taken like with the Hubble telescope, and now we've got the new system up there that's up and running. So this is the old maps, but from the Hubble. But if you look at this is a photograph not of stars, but of galaxies. Look how many, every dot you see represents another galaxy, like the Milky Way I just showed you. Now, some are bigger, some are smaller. Ours is considered average. But think about it. And again, they don't even have a way to count this. So what do? They say, oh, well, we theorize that there's approximately 250 to 300 billion galaxies in the known universe. Now let that sink in for a second. 250 to 300 billion, that's with a B, billion, galaxies, each containing probably at least 250 billion stars like our own, or similar to our own, in each one of them. So think for a second, the known universe is so drastically, mind-blowingly huge and expansive that the human mind really almost can't even grasp it, how big it actually is. All right. I mean, it's just enormously, enormously big. I mean, it's mind-blowing. And I'll say this, when I was a police officer, we could not go up to a building and say, oh, it's clear, unless we first searched that whole building. So for people that are naysayers about extraterrestrial life or intelligent life in the universe, I say this: Until we are reasonably able to travel to every single star in every single one of these galaxies, you cannot reasonably say that there is not intelligent life in our universe. You cannot reasonably say that until we search the buildings and call back and say it's all clear. We can't just determine that it is. And if you take it from a mathematical standpoint with the Drake equation absolutely proves, just from a mathematical reasoning standpoint, that there is more than likely other life in the universe. And if there's life in the universe, that there's a lot of it. Bill Clinton, when he was in office, he did a press release one day about a meteor we found that, when they broke open the meteor, had fossilized microbial life in it. So, and it came from outer space. So we know 100% without a doubt there is life out there. 100%. We have proof of this. And that, I don't believe that's the only specimen we had like that. I know it was one for sure that Bill Clinton did a press release on it. You can look that up, talking about how they found microbial fossilized life inside this, unquestionable. And so that absolutely proves that there's life out there. And if there's life out there, there's intelligent life out there. Another thing NASA has even spoken of is bacteria growing on the outside of the windows of the space station in space. How is bacteria growing on the outside of the windows in space? Again, possible. Now, that could easily be from stuff we brought up there, but it's surviving in space. It could also very likely be that it's from stuff that's already out there some way, somehow. The things that we have on Earth are seeded from other places. Where do you think gold comes from? Think it grows naturally on the Earth? No. What about iron? Think it grows naturally on the Earth? No. It was seeded here. Or trees, fish, even basic life. And I can tell you this: I do not follow the theory of evolution as they try to give it to us, which I think is just Darwinism and is horse pucky. I asked my teacher in second grade, I said, well, if we came from apes, then please explain to me how we still have apes in our world today. Because they would have evolved into humans. They wouldn't be apes anymore after all these millions of years. All BS. Like I said, everything is about control. And part of that is controlling what you think. And they especially hate religion. Now, if they hate religion so bad and they hate God so bad, there's a good reason that you better take a serious, consideration to that. All right. Okay. So moving on a little bit, I'm going to swing back to our friend Ronald Reagan. All right. Ronald Reagan was given a briefing by our scientists to our ability in our space program. And they gave him some inside stuff, not just the typical NASA BS Buckus routine. But he said, we had launched with five top scientists in the field of aerospace. It was fascinating. Space is really the last frontier. And some of the developments there in astronomy or science fiction, unless they are real, learn that it's a little hard for me to read. It's so small on the screen. I struggle. We learned that some have the transfer capacity such that it could put 300 people in orbit. All right. So he's talking about a craft that's so advanced it can bring 300 people into orbit at once. Well, here's the problem with that. NASA today, NASA can't even do that with the space shuttle. So what type of technology is he talking about? You see what I'm saying? It's technology that's not presented to us, to the public. Now, take a look. If I can get my hand in here, right? Take a look right here. He had an easel behind him with this artistic rendition of a craft from Solar Warden. All right. That's what that is. And the reason I know that is because of this man, William Tomkins, that we referenced earlier. What did he do? He built aircraft and models for the Navy that the Navy used He was an intelligence. Like I said, he briefed those Nazis about the reptilians they were working with, but he also was a big model person and built out models that they used to create our actual build out actual aircraft carriers like the one in his hand. But on top of that, this is also a creation that was created by William Tomkins. All right. And William Tomkins, this is his creation. He sketched this out as a type of craft for Solar Warden. All right. He's accredited with that, with this. This is a composite of that, of what it would potentially look like if it was real. That's why I use this in the image of my thumbnail for this show. All right. This is the design based off of William Tomkins. And his design, William Tomkins' design, is in the briefing that Ronald Reagan gave to the public, where he's talking about advanced technology, so advanced that we still technically don't have it in the public today. So there you go. Big kicker. Now I bring you to another source, the story of Gary McKinnon. I first came across Gary McKinnon in 2008 in this story. Gary McKinnon was a computer hacker, and he decided he was going to hack into the Pentagon. And the reason he was hacking into the Pentagon is because he wanted to try to see if he could find any secrets they had on what? On UFOs. Okay, that was his goal. And so it says right here, British hacker Gary McKinnon. Now he's actually Scottish, but he was living in London at the time when this took place. All right. But British hacker Gary McKinnon had access into Pentagon's computer files. He discovered the existence of Solar Warden, code name given to particular areas of the secret space program. Let's see if I can read this. 20 years ago, the United States was confronted with the largest hacking military computers in history. And to everyone's surprise, the brain behind this large-scale hacking was of a humble, autistic Scottish hacker, Gary McKinnon. They say autistic because he's partially autistic and his brain is just super intelligent. He's highly functioning autistic. He can act normal. He might seem a little off, but he's like a Sheldon, but not funny. You know what I mean? That's basically the best way to describe it. Anyway, the purpose behind the hacking was not to gain military money or fame. The hacker was just looking for information about extraterrestrials. Well, gee, I wonder, did he find any? Information about the creation of a secret. This is what he found now. He found information about the creation of a secret space fleet and the existence of an inexhaustible source of energy for the secret spaceships. He claimed that he witnessed legit photos of UFOs in computer files in the Johnson Space Center. He hacked a whole bunch of stuff. He hacked the Pentagon. He hacked other companies. He hacked a bunch. It wasn't just one thing. He even snapped a screenshot of now pay attention to this right here, because I'm going to circle back to this, right? I'm going to show you videos and photographs coming up almost next. He snapped a screenshot of one of the cigar-shaped UFOs between space and the Earth's atmosphere. That's important. Unfortunately, it was later removed from his computer. Oh, imagine that. He also emphasized the fact of authorities use photo edits in order to remove UFOs from accidentally falling to certain, important photographs. Like there's been shows about photos we have of Mars and with the rovers and of the moon where they've photoshopped out entire facilities that are absolutely there. No question. Gary McKinnon goes on to say, I also found a list of officers in the officers who do not work on Earth section. This does not mean that this is a list of aliens, but it is the fact that they do not work on our planet. They serve a fleet that did not consist of ships of the Navy, but spaceships from other planets, far from our planet. Now, that's important because the next guest I've got coming on next week is one of the pilots that flew one of these aircraft carriers, if you will, for lack of a better term, in the space fleet for Solar Warden. Okay. And I'm going to have him come on and tell his story. But before he can, that's why I'm laying out the base work now for people to understand. NASA hacker, Solar Warden, reverse engineering technology. It goes on to talk about the same thing. And also referencing Solar Warden. Okay. Now, this is important. Remember the new Top Gun movie? If you remember the opening scene, if you haven't seen that movie, go see it. It's fantastic. Even though I'm not a giant fan of Tom Cruise, it's a fantastic movie nonetheless. I like everyone else in it. But anyway, in the beginning of that movie, he was doing the test flight of the experimental Dark Star craft or whatever it was, right? Which, dude, I was laughing because that is so like old technology now. I mean, it's a rotten joke to say that's like, it should have been something that was actually in space, not just, high orbit kind of thing, doing Mach nothing at this point. But anyway, if you pay close attention in that, on the jock stick in the cockpit that he was using to give more power to the plane, there was a little symbol of a skunk there. And then also on the back tail wing, there was also a skunk pictured on there. That's not an accident. That's in reference in Lockheed Martin's Skunk Works department. Lockheed Skunk Works department, they're the ones that have come up with all of our stealth technology, like our stealth bombers and all that. But remember how old that stuff is and how long it's been released. I mean, for forever now. Imagine the kind of stuff they've got now. Well, here we go. A former head of Lockheed Skunk Works department, Ben Rich, publicly made this statement and a few others that I'll explain before he died. Boom. We already have the means to travel among the stars, but these technologies are locked up in black projects, and it would take an act of God to get them out to benefit humanity, because they're going to be kept secret because we're the trash. They're not for us. They're only for them. They hoard the technology. Anything you can imagine, we already know how to do. Let that sink in. Anything you can imagine, we already know how to do. That is not a small statement, okay? This was Ben Rich, the director of Lockheed Skunk Works, stated this in 1993 at an alumni speech at California's UCLA, which, by the way, that's where my stepfather started medical school when he was 13 years old and later was nominated for a Nobel Prize in virology, which is why I can tell you some things are very bad that you should avoid. All right. Anyway, this is no small statement. Ben Rich went on to make other statements that to personal friends and everything else that got out to the public. One was he reiterated this statement saying, anything that you can imagine, we already know how to do. He went on later to expand on that. And he went on to say, anything you can imagine. And then he said, any science fiction movie you've ever seen. He said, we're 50 years beyond that right now at this point in our technology here on Earth. He said, he specifically went on to name Star Wars. He specifically went on to name Star Trek. All right. And he said, Star Wars, Star Trek, we are 50 years beyond that technology right now. Right now. We're 50 years beyond all that stuff right now. He says anything you can imagine in any Star Wars and any science fiction film, we know how to do it. And then he even went on to say this one time. He says, E.T., we have the technology to bring him home. You don't have to call home. We can bring him home, like E.B. Eben 1, right? Now, that said, he also went on to say later, he says, we've got the ability to fly to other galaxies. Remember the galaxies I showed you, how far apart they are, and back, and it not take a lifetime to do so. All right. Because, in a lot of our science fiction movies, it would take so long to travel, you would age by that time. So you're frozen in a hyper sleep, in a chamber that suspends your aging function until you arrive at your destination. That was in the Aliens movies. That was in the Passenger movie with Chris Pratt, which I love that movie. He woke up from his high man, I'm struggling with words all of a sudden. His stasis chamber, for lack of a better word. But anyway, so a lot of science fiction movies take that thing, the new Lost in Space remake they did, same thing. But he's saying that we don't even have to do that. And that means what that means is that there is Star Trek uses this thing of hyperspace, where it's traveling in another dimension where you're going past the speed of light. So that would mean that there is technology for hyperspace, and I've heard other things to confirm that. On top of that, it also means there's stargates, just like in the movie Stargate. All right. But instead of it just being, on Earth, which there are stargates on Earth that can go anywhere too. You can go to Mars, you can go to other planets on the stargates on Earth or around the Earth. We got technology for all of that. The movie Stargate was leaked by intelligence agencies to Hollywood to put out there. Absolutely true. We have that technology. That is not a joke. And again, you can use them for going around the planet. I've said before, pyramids aren't just in the Middle East. They're literally all over the earth, including every continent. America has pyramids. They're not talked about. They're all covered up. South America, we know, has pyramids. Many of these pyramids had stargates in them. They had jump gates. And it's not a coinky dink that Mars has the exact same 3 pyramids that we find in Giza. Same size, same shape, same distance apart, that match from Earth to Mars. That's not a coincidence. Again, I would say it's Stargate technology. And there are other programs. I could do a show on Andrew Bashago, who talks about being involved in the U.S. Stargate technology program and time travel. They go together because you can't just go to location. Time and space is connected. If you can travel time, you can travel. If you can travel space, you can travel time. UFOs can do it, and so can the Stargates. You can dial it in for location or time. So they like I said, they're connected. Time and space is one thing. It's not separate. And if it is, they're linked together. So anyway, that's just another source. I've given you many sources, but that's another major source that I would not discount. Many people don't know about that source, from Gary McKenna, from what Reagan said back in the day, from what even General MacArthur said, to what Admiral Bird has said. Admiral Bird made other comments that are harder to find about coming across the UFO technology down there, to what Gary McKinnon said, to back to what Ben Rich said. I mean, it's a lot of different sources, and you can look all those up. You can do research on all these things. So needless to say, what happened with that is we built out a secret space program. Now, you remember when we read that thing that said Solar Warden, and it said he had pictures that would look like a cigar-shaped silver UFO? In the early programs of Solar Warden, it looked like the top ships here you see. They just look like a giant cigar-shaped silver platform. And basically, the way I've heard people describe it that worked in these programs, it's like if you took an aircraft carrier and you shoved it inside of a submarine and you stuck that in space. And that's basically what it was. All right. So now later advanced models of the program over time would be like what you see on the lower section, like the model that William Tomkins made here on the left. And what you see over here on the right looks a lot more like the whole Battlestar Galactica kind of thing. All right. They actually said that Tomkins was too influenced by Star Wars, and they said that some of the Dark Fleet actually built out Death Stars just like out of Star Wars, and that their uniforms look identical to that too. Because I mean, look, it was close to Nazi uniforms. That's not a stretch. But anyway, but whistleblowers now say it looks more like Battlestar Galactica, which is like this bottom section. You know, it's built out a little more for capability and stuff. And the guest I'm going to have coming on, he said the craft he flew, he would describe as like the Battlestar Galactica look for their battleship for the Galactica. All right. Now here's some other renditions of what the space fleet would look like as far as the cigar craft. So you have a long, like a mile long or more size craft. Okay, that's how big it is. It's built in sections. A lot of times it's built in sections in space and then just pieced together. It's built like a modular kit, and then they just piece it together like a Lego. It has smaller craft that go inside it. All right. And I'll give you a little bit of a description here too, since I got this picture pulled up. If you want to know the basic layout, especially the early craft, this is how it was. If you took this long cigar-shaped cylinder and you cut it into thirds, all right? So you got one front section, a middle section, and an aft section, okay? Thirds. The front section would be, the whole thing is divided from top to bottom in half on its length, okay? So if we're talking about the front section of the ship, it's divided from the top section and the bottom section. Okay. The top section is all command. It's command, it's navigation, it's offices for command, for strategizing, communications, all that kind of stuff. It's all command. The bottom section of the front third of the ship is all scientific stuff. It's medical stuff for personnel. It's scientists for experimenting on strange materials or organisms they come across on their travels. It's also engineering, R&D. All the technical stuff is done, scientific and medical, basically on the bottom half of the front section. Now the middle section also is divided in half. The top half of the middle section, and the middle section is the largest portion of the ship. It's bigger. But the middle section, the top half of it is the hangar for all their aircraft. They've got fighter aircraft. They've got scientific aircraft. For intelligence, they've got bomber aircraft. Okay. But the aircraft, the hangar, like on an aircraft carrier, sits on the top middle section of this ship. Then the bottom half of the middle section, that's all of the housing for the people on the ship. That's their housing quarters. All right. I'm sure it's broken up into different sections and areas. They probably have different like cafeterias, eateries, whatever, stores, whatever, that kind of stuff in there. Then the back third of the ship, the aft portion, it is solely for engineering. And it is said that they have 5 different types of propulsion systems that all operate on different physics or different designs and completely differently built systems, because they say you don't ever want to be in space and have a breakdown. So if one engine doesn't work, they've got multiple backup engines that they could get back with or even limp in with. You see what I'm saying? So they have multiple engines. Now, when it comes to the propulsions of these craft, all right, it was first explained to me that the first early propulsion systems were designed off of what's called torsion physics. Torsion physics It's like if you hold a way to explain that easily is if you hold a wet bar of soap in your hand and you start squeezing your back two fingers, it's going to propel that soap forward. That's like an oversimplification of torsion physics. All right. Another explanation of that, I've seen Bob Lazar from S4 explain. If you put a bowling ball on a bed and then you depress the gravity in the bed by pushing down in front of the bowling ball, that bowling ball is going to naturally roll forward towards the depression you created. Well, we can do that with gravity as well, and that is part of torsion physics. All right. Now, that said, those are the earlier propulsion stages that we had. The more advanced stuff that we've learned from help over time from other races is we've used different things. One was Alternative 3, I think was the name of one, or Omega 3. I'll have to check that out. Omega 6, I think it was called, but something that's found plentiful on the surface of the moon. They said one shuttle of that could power the entire Earth for a year of that material. Omega 6, I believe. I don't know. It's been a long time. I think it's Omega 6. But the new thing that they use now, from my understanding, is they actually use antimatter propulsion systems. Antimatter is the most destructive source in the universe. It's the most powerful source, and it wouldn't take a lot of it to destroy the entire Earth or to create a black hole. All right, so it's dangerous stuff. But they now use antimatter drives as a form of propulsion for these crafts. All right, here's another picture. Blown up. It's not real clear. That's a picture someone took of one in our atmosphere. That's a better picture, again, of a Solar Warden style cigar-shaped craft that someone took in a picture. I had a picture. I was trying to find a video. There used to be man, I'll tell you, when I was going back and trying to find the videos and pictures of stuff I'm getting ready to show you, it's very difficult. In fact, a lot of that's been taken off the internet. And there was some very good photos of this from a plane, that somebody on a plane took photos of one of these passing by, and it was really great footage, video footage. It was really neat. A lot of times when you see photographs of these things, that right now you see this horizontally laying down across the horizon. A lot of times, if not most, you'll see them laying vertically for some odd reason, and I'm not sure why. It's very common to see these things sitting vertical in our atmosphere or in our sky on the few times that they do actually come into our sky. And I think I've got a clip of that.
I have no idea. But
in this video, you actually see, like I said, these things don't have the ability just to fly. They can actually jump in and out of our time or dimension. And you actually see this craft carrier, mothership, if you will, doing that in this video.
I have no idea. But I've shown it. That's in real.
You see how it was literally phasing in and out of our reality with the like light, and then it stops and it's here. That's part of that system.
I have no idea. But I've shown it. That's in real time, and then slowed down a little bit, and then I've taken some frame grabs so you can see that each end lights up individually, and it kind of goes from like a silver look to like a brass look, and then it also will flash, and the flash was bright enough to where I thought, before I could see it later, just with my naked eye, it just looked like it was something glinting in the sun, like it was an object that was metallic with mirrors or something that was glinting the sun at me. It was late in the afternoon. And here I'm showing the non-cropped image slowed down so that you can get an idea of just the scale of it in the frame.
Sorry, an ad came up there at the end. Here's another one, and this one's very interesting too. Seeing that one was really neat because you see these two craft. You see the cylinder shaped craft. One goes in, then the other, and then the ship takes off. So that's really kind of phenomenal. That shows exactly what Solar Warden would look like with the smaller craft entering the larger carrier craft, and then it takes off. Now, it was said that when Solar Warden first started, they had a whole fleet of these carrier groups, and there were 8, I believe, carrier groups like that. They named the most common name is that you hear most often that people said they served on was what? Now I'm drawing a blank. They have an Enterprise. Go figure. I mean, of course, they got a USS Enterprise. They also have a Nimitz. They have a Dreadnought, and they have what's the one I'm forgetting? The most common one is the Nautilus. The Nautilus is another one, I believe. Yeah, the Nautilus. And I hear people saying that they were on that one the most that are in these programs. But let's look at that video again, because that is really phenomenal footage of what. That is wild, I'll tell you. But that would be a closer understanding of what it looks like. Now, the smaller craft, those appear to be round. They've got several different types, but the main one you see is, and this is the old name of it, is referred to the Delta Wing or the TR-3B. This is actually a picture taken off of a wall at Lockheed Martin, all right, where it shows them working on a TR-3B. There's several different types of the TR-3B, and they have different names, all right? TR-3B is one of the early names that's been commonly used when referring to these programs. This would be an example of a drawing explaining about the nuclear-powered TR-3B, all right? There's different types. They've got different types of propulsions. Like I said, they've gone through a whole evolution with these things. Here's another picture at a facility where it looks like this is just a streamlined version of a Delta Dart or Aurora project that they're working on. They're loading up here. Here's what it looks like. This is one of the most common. There's a couple of different ones. This is the most common one you see. Now notice it has a big bubble in the center of this thing. And I would argue that's the main propulsion drive. And what that is on these craft is it's like the Glocker, the Bell, the German Bell. That's what I would argue. It's a type of, I'm sure it's an advanced form of what that was back in the day. And then on the corners, edges of this triangle, they have smaller proportion devices that act like, better for just small movements and getting around. But it's these triangle craft that you find are basically they form the troop carriers and the fighters for the cylinder carrier group craft. All right, that's what you see most common. And now we're gonna look at some of those. Okay, that craft, you saw that light, and it started emanating from the center of the craft, like I said, is the main propulsion drive. That craft didn't take off. It disappeared. It literally went into another dimensional state. It phased out. It didn't just fly away. It phased out into another dimension. All right. That is a phenomenal video. Now, just so people might not believe, someone could say, well, that's alien. That's not US. Yeah, well, check this out. This is a video of a man catching one on the interstate, seeing one of these things land at a company facility in some town. Check this out. I got photographs of that model. There's different types of models. Oh, doggone it. Let me see if I can go up here. There's one other picture I wanted to show because this is going to play into some other stuff. Look for this. I'm glad I thought about it. If I can find it. I hope I remember to put this on. This took me so long to get all the stuff on here. I had no idea how long it would take me. I got to do each one at a time, and it takes forever. And I'm not seeing it. Doggone it. I'm gonna try to see if I can look for this one picture and see if I can't get it on here. Even if it takes me a few more minutes. Stand with me real quick. There's one picture I really want to show because it ties into another one of my guests. By the way, I'll throw this out there. So I did 2 shows, really 3, that explain the coming zombie virus. Remember? We talked about that on here. And I found a second military source that was blown away that I found out about that information. And he said he confirmed more to the story, gave more information. I did another show on that, on detail on that, on the suits they wore, the procedures, et cetera, et cetera. That was really, really amazing. Well, I found a third source. The new guest I'm getting ready to have on, he also said that he was told that now he doesn't know much information about it, but he said he was told that there is a zombie virus out there that he was made aware of, that he was told in the course of his operations. Okay, I found the photograph. So let me see if I can hurry up and get it on here. It doesn't take long. I've got so much stuff on here, it was running out of space. I got to delete something in order to add something else. They don't only let me put up so much at a time. But I've got this photo, and I really want to show this one. There it is. So let's get that on there. It'll take just a minute. And yeah, that plays into my next guess. This one. Okay, here's the photograph I was looking for. This is a modern aircraft carrier, and this was even on the History Channel. If you notice in the top left corner of the screen, there is one of the versions of a TR-3B craft on top of the on the aircraft carrier, like it's nothing. This is a space aircraft for the space fleet. This thing can fly to the moon. This thing can go from the Earth's surface to the moon's surface in 9 minutes. 9 minutes. 9 minutes to go from the Earth surface to landing on the moon in 9 minutes. And it can also, this thing can fly straight to Mars. It would take longer, but it can absolutely fly to Mars. Now, one reason I wanted to show this, other than the fact that this is actually our technology and not just alien stuff, even though aliens helped us make it, is that Sean Starry, the guest I had on, he said he was actually on an aircraft carrier when one of these things was landed on the deck, just like you see in this photo. And he was allowed to go inside of the craft. He was allowed to go inside of the craft. And as he was looking around, he said there was strange wording on the screen, and a strange language. And he was trying to figure out what the language was. And the pilot told him, don't even try to look it up. You can't find it. And he's like, what do you mean? He's like, you will not find that language anywhere. And he says, well, what language is it? And he said, it's Enochian magic. Enochian magic. My friends, that goes back to the fallen angels. Enochian magic. There's a language, if I thought about it, I'd put up a photo of that. There's a language of Enochian magic that was supposedly given to us in occult societies, so I don't recommend messing with it, by fallen angels, all right? And they said that was actually what was used on the screen of this craft. My friend Sean Starry, I'm going to get him back on to do another show sometime, and I'll bring that up and let him explain that to you. But it was on an aircraft carrier just like this. Now, I'm going to show you some more TR-3B footage of some of the capabilities these things can do with their energy weapons. That's quite scary. One thing to notice about these craft is they spin a lot. You'll notice they slowly will spin in a circle, and I'm not exactly sure, what or why or how they do that, but you'll notice a lot of times in videos that you'll see them spinning. Here's some other footage of them and their capabilities. See, our governments use these, especially in the Middle East, where they can get away with it and know that it won't make like a lot of attention to the public, but they can test out some of their equipment and basically use them as guinea pigs to test out their stuff. Anyway, a guy starts swearing there, so I cut it off a little bit early. Here's another crazy thing. This one that shows it looks like they beam somebody down and back up. It's crazy. Isn't that crazy? Yeah, people are saying, wow, that's wow. All right. I mean, it's some crazy, crazy stuff. But the idea is trying to put all this information together. It can be quite overwhelming for people, and I don't want to overwhelm people too much at once. I know, too late, right? But it's a lot of information. Now, I wanted to present all this to make a historical case for how the secret space program was created and how we have different competing, space agencies now, if you will. There are smaller agencies like China's trying to create their own program by themselves. I've heard the same thing possibly with France, with other countries, India, that they're trying to have their own smaller programs. Some billionaires, huge like Rockefeller type people have their own like little stuff, small stuff just to themselves to, basically lifeboats for them to get away and stuff like that. If you listen to Bigelow with Bigelow Aerospace, I've listened to him say in an interview, he says, people always say, when are we going to have alien contact or disclosure? He's like, who's to say they haven't been here as long as we have or longer, and he's right. That's what he was trying to give a hint to tell us. They've always been here. And as long as we've been here, and probably longer, and many cases. So, but I wanted to give all that as a kind of an intro to everybody so they can be caught up to speed, because my next guest coming on served in Solar Warden. He was a pilot of one of these carriers in the space fleet, and he flew in the USS Nimitz. All right. And he's going to come on and he's going to tell you his story. Now, one thing he's going to talk about that I have not explained, which is the next step in this thing, is the next step in all this is hold on a second. My power's getting low. Anyway, so the next step in all this is, how do they get people to serve in these programs? All right. Well, that's what my next guest is going to come on and talk about. There is a program, and this will be part of the show next week. There's a program called the 20 and Back program. 20 and Back. Now, what this is the government comes to you sometimes by force, sometimes they give you an invitation. All right. And speaking of invitation, side tangent real quick, President Eisenhower, well, his granddaughter was invited to go live on a base on Mars, in a colony on Mars. And she because of her father being Eisenhower, and he was largely a part in setting up a lot of this stuff, she turned down the offer, but she has gone public to tell people that she was offered legitimately to go to live on Mars and represent Earth and humanity on Mars. So that she gives testimony to that. Okay. Also, there's another thing I will talk about on another episode, because I think this is enough. We're already 2.5 hours in, and I don't want to just fry people's brains with too much overload. There's a program called I'll save that. I'm gonna save that for another show. I don't want to get into it. But anyway, going back to where I was, there's a program called the 20 and Back. And like I said, sometimes they're forced in it. Sometimes you're given an invitation to join it. The 20 and Back program is the number one way people serve in the secret space programs. All right. And the 20 and Back, this is how it works. They take you either when you're a child or when you're very young, like 18, 19 years old kind of thing. They put you through a training program. You will spend 20 years serving in the space fleet. Then when your time is up, they have technology where they can age regress your body and your mind to the exact moment of when they took you, and they can replace you back to the point they took you within like 15 minutes. You wake up the next day not even knowing that you've been gone for 20 years. And to your family, to your parents, you just woke up the next day like nothing happened. And that is the 20 and Back program. And I know it sounds crazy, but there are many witnesses that have come forward to explain how they were in the 20 and Back program. Right. And there's different ways of getting in it. There's many people that are telling their stories of how how they did it or how they served in it. Now, the most common thing, from my understanding, is that when you finish your 20 and back, they erase your memory. They have technology. They've got super technology. They can do anything with this. Look, they in the 20 and back, you can get your head literally blown off by an alien. All right, literally, and they can revive you. They can put you in a pod that can rebuild your entire body like it was nothing, and you can come back. They can kill your body completely, and they can stick you in a clone of yourself, a DNA perfect clone of yourself. And sometimes when they send you back in a clone of yourself, just because it's easier. Like Avatar, they can grow a clone, and they can grow it to whatever age they need. They can do it rapidly, and they can stop it at whatever age, and just place your consciousness in it. They can place your soul in it. So it's really crazy. And like, we got this technology. We didn't come up with this. This is technology we got from others. All right. And we had to sign a treaty with those others in order to be able to be allowed to have and use this technology. And that is that you would return somebody to the point of when they were conscripted in the program. And most times that I know, their memories are erased. That's the most common thing I've heard. Now, my guest coming on says his memory was not erased because he held a higher classification as an officer. Right. But many people said that their minds were erased as a part of exiting the program. And he's going to come on and explain how he got a proposition to enter this program. He's going to explain about his experience there, how it took place, things like that. And then what happened after he got out of the programs, the level of technology they use, the interaction with other species that we had, things that threatened to attack him or threatened him, or he even got punished and was sentenced to prison in mines, and like very rough condition mines, for something he did for a while. And he was able to get out of that. Most people that are put in those positions aren't. But here's something else important to understand. There are high-level politicians and military personnel that if you personally piss these people off enough, you can be easily made to disappear, and you find that you're off planet in some prison colony doing hard labor. That is not a joke. That, I wish to God that was a joke. It's not a joke. That is real. I had a friend of mine personally that came to me recently about wanting to legally go after a high-level politician over evidence. And I was like, look, you do what you feel like you need to, but I'm going to caution you. You got to understand, these people, they don't play by our rules, our standards, and they can make you disappear. And it's not just, even if your body turns up dead, doesn't mean that that's not a clone and you're not somewhere else serving a prison sentence, off world even. Almost like that movie Predators by Robert Rodriguez, where these people wake up when they're falling out of a parachute and they realize they're not in Cambodia, they're in some alien planet, that they've just been hijacked and dropped off on an alien planet, like for sport. Don't think that kind of stuff doesn't actually happen. I mean, it's insanity. It's absolute insanity. And I wish to God it wasn't real, because I wouldn't wish that on my absolute worst enemy, let alone anybody. So, but these are the things you got to think of. If these things that I've said on this show are true, think of the ramifications of what all that means and how that plays out in multiple areas and levels. You know what I mean? So, it's high craziness. They do have medical pods that they can put you in, and it will rebuild you completely. You remember that movie Elysium with Matt Damon, and that soldier had his face blown off with a grenade, and they put him in a pod and it built it back? Yep, they've got that. That is real. That is no joke. You got cancer, any disease whatsoever known to man, they can put you in a pod, and a med pod, and you're all good. They had the same thing in the movie Passengers I brought up earlier, med pods. That's common in movies. And the Prometheus movies, when the aliens, they had also med pods. It's a common thing in science fiction, but it's science fact. But again, it's not for us. It's for them. So and I don't think that's right. Just morally as a species. They see themselves as better than us, and they're not. They're not. I would much rather have friends like you all than friends with those people, because um, they have this air of superiority it's false, and it's self-serving, and that's always makes it evil. Always makes it evil. And a lot of these people, there is a large part of Satanism that is involved in the secret space program, and I'll let my guest explain more about that, and how that ties into it all. But where you got the elites and occultists, you're gonna have Satanism, plain and simple. And unfortunately, like with the ICC, they have a stronghold on a lot of that stuff. So, but anyway, I hope that didn't blow your mind too much. And like I said, a lot of that you can research all this stuff. Some of it you can't. Some of it I'm going off of people I've interviewed and whistle testimony and things I've heard studying this for many years. I know a lot of players in the game, not necessarily personally. I know a few, and like I said, one of them's coming on the show. After that, on the 26th, I'm going on another person's show that's on a super soldier program, and it's about the space program creating super soldiers. And we're going to talk about that, and I'm going on his show to talk about that, and then I'll invite him back to my show, and see if I can't get him to come back on over here to just do the same thing, talking about the super soldier program from the off-road space program point of view. They also work on super soldier programs right here, and also that also involve not just space but time travel. There are groups they're time wars. Just like we've got the wars we're dealing with, there are time wars. And in those time wars, they try to alter history. And there's groups that fight over that. Some groups are better at it than others. But that's been going on since like the Civil War, at least. We've had technology. Not saying that the Civil War had technology. I'm saying they've been going back to the Civil War. In World War II, oh, forget about it. I mean, that's also why I claim we have something called the Mandela effect that I've spoken about before, where it's actually ripples in time. They're messing with time because you see the ripples. Like if you have a pond that's still, and someone throws a rock, you might not have seen the rock, but you see the ripples, and something disturbed the water because you can see the ripples, so you can discern that someone threw the pebble in the water. That's what the butterfly effect is. That's what the Mandela effect is. You see the ripples in time, where time's trying to catch up or correct itself, which it's naturally designed to do by God. And in so doing, it changes little things. And that's where we get the Mandela effect. So if you want, go look up the Mandela effect. But again, too, as much as I talk about all this high strangeness, I still say it all comes back to God. A holy angel doesn't need a spacecraft to travel through space and time, and they're a creature of pure spirit, pure energy, and it's because they're on a super advanced level than we are. And the goal is that, if we do good on this earth, get to heaven, that we will become like them, still have bodies, but will become spiritually advanced like the angels are. And we share in their nature now with our souls, which are immortal. Therefore, you share in some of the abilities of the angels, like being telepathic or having intuition or actually remote viewing. I mean, those aren't dangerous things that can be used dangerously, but those are natural abilities that are created into our beings. And our governments utilize these things to weaponize them or to use them for intelligence gathering, et cetera, et cetera. But anyway, enough of all that for now. Like I said, I could go on forever on this stuff. It is very interesting, and I don't want to go on too much. If people have questions on specific topics or want to know more, you can write me at harbingerreport@yahoo.com, and I'll take a look. If enough people are requesting the same thing, I'll definitely address it. I can't say I can address everything, and I'm super busy right now. But with other things I've got going on, and fires in the works, so to speak. But anyway, look, absolute pleasure. I appreciate all of you. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please pass the show on to other people so I can try to get some more subscribers. My last show, I had 5,000 subscribers in a year. I'm almost halfway through a year and still haven't even made 1,000 yet. And yet I like the content a whole lot better now than what I did before. But anyway, it's not always about that either. I'm not huge on just focusing on that kind of stuff, but it does help, and it is important. If I could get to a point where I could do this as a job, that would be real helpful for funding me to get other things finished that I'm trying to accomplish, especially like my movies and books and things like that. I would give me more time for that. But anyway, look, God bless all of y'all. Keep the lights on. Thanks for coming. See you soon. Take care. God bless.